working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Eliana Sebastian, and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. On tonight's headlines. Aftershocks rocked the northern Philippines early Wednesday, hours after a strong earthquake injured at least 6 people and caused substantial damage to a hospital and several old churches. At least 24 people died after Cyclone slammed into Bangladesh, forcing the evacuation of about 1 million people from their homes, officials said. About 33,000 Rohingya refugees from Myanmar, controversially relocated from the mainland to a storm-prone island in the Bay of Bengal, were ordered to stay indoors, but there were no reports of casualties or damage. A Thai plastic surgeon kidnapped while traveling in Mali has returned home after a ransom was paid. Local media reported Tuesday. Noparat Ratanawaraha, who runs a popular YouTube channel where he posts travel clips, said he was on a tour of Mali and Burkina Faso, both nations that are grappling with bloody and long-running insurgencies. President Marcos and former United Kingdom Prime Minister Anthony Charles Linton Blair discussed on Tuesday the best practices to make government effective and efficient. First in our news, aftershocks rocked the northern Philippines early Wednesday, hours after a strong earthquake injured at least 6 people and caused substantial damage to a hospital and several old churches, authorities said. The 6.4 magnitude quake struck the mountain town of Dolores in Abra province late Tuesday, followed by numerous aftershocks over the rest of the night, the state seismology office said. The Lagayan mayor's office and a high school building were sealed off after they sustained cracks and broken glass windows, according to pictures posted on the town's official Facebook page. In the city of Batak, in the neighboring province of Ilocos Norte, several patients spent most of the night outside a government hospital after the ceiling collapsed in several rooms and damaged equipment, hospital staff said. Boulders rolling down a hillside temporarily blocked a road linking Batak to the nearby town of Bana. But rescue officials said the landslide had since been cleared. A number of old churches in Abra and Ilocos Norte also sustained damage, according to the Civil Defense Office. Ilocos Norte, Governor Matthew Manotoc declared a school holiday, and government workers were told not to report for work as the authorities inspected the integrity of buildings. In July, a 7.0 magnitude quake also in mountainous Abra province triggered landslides and ground fissures, killing 11 people and injuring several hundred others, according to the official count. Quakes are a daily occurrence in the Philippines, which sits along the Pacific Ring of Fire, an arc of intense seismic, as well as volcanic activity that stretches from Japan through Southeast Asia and across the Pacific Basin. At least 24 people died after Cyclone slammed into Bangladesh, forcing the evacuation of about 1 million people from their homes. Cyclones, the equivalent of hurricanes in the Atlantic or typhoons in the Pacific, are a regular menace in the region, but scientists say climate change is likely making them more intense and frequent. Take a look.
তারা দিছি আর এমনি মাল পানি উঠে মাছটা কি ভেড়ে গেছে এর সকালবেলা আসে দেখি সব বুঝে গেছে তারপর নেট দিয়ে বেড়া দিয়ে দিছি অনেক মাছগুলো সবজি গেছে আমরা ওই জায়গা দিয়ে পাইছো কতগুলো মাছ
Update from Bangladesh, where the team there, led by UN Resident Coordinator Gwyn Lewis, is supporting the government after Cyclone Cyclone struck southern coast yesterday. Ahead of the storm, we and our partners work to mobilize volunteers to ensure early warning and evacuation in coordination with the government. We're also working on a 72-hour needs assessment and identifying needs mission. Major damage to agriculture, water facilities and infrastructure is anticipated in the hardest hit districts. Over 219,000 women, children and men were evacuated to temporary shelters by the storm. In Basan Char and Cox's Bazar, homes to tens of thousands of Rohingya refugees. Our colleagues on the ground report, thank God, no flooding, but some minor damage.
Cyclone made landfall in southern Bangladesh late Monday, but authorities managed to get about 1 million people to safety before the monster weather system hit. Around 10 million people were without power in districts along the coast on Tuesday, while schools were shut across much of the country's south. Officials say 8 people are missing from a dredging boat that sank during the storm late Monday night in the Bay of Bengal near the country's largest industrial park at Mirsarai. Trees were uprooted as far away as the capital Dhaka, hundreds of kilometers from the storm's center. Officials said about 33,000 Rohingya refugees from Myanmar, controversially relocated from the mainland to a storm-prone island in the Bay of Bengal, were ordered to stay indoors, but there were no reports of casualties or damage. Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez on October 22 spoke at Vietnam's Meteorological and Hydrological Administration about disaster preparedness and said the goal is to have early warning systems in all countries of the world within 5 years. Take a look.
When we have an early warning system and we know that something terrible is coming, we have time to relocate people, we have time to protect property. But if we do not know what's coming, then terrible tragedies are still unfolding in the world. We are creating a global coalition for that purpose, is to make sure that in 5 years we will have early warning systems in all countries of the world to end the tragedy of people dying, livelihoods being destroyed, because people did not know that the tragedy was unfolding. Mekong Delta is vulnerable to 2 things: vulnerable to the sea level rise and vulnerable to the reduction of water of the Mekong River. So this is, I think, an example that shows how important the work you are doing is, and how important that your experience can be shared with other countries in the world.
Mr. Gutierrez paid tribute to the strong partnership between the UN and Vietnam during a visit there on Friday. He was speaking in the capital, Hanoi, at a ceremony marking the 45th anniversary of the country's membership in the UN. He recalled that little more than a generation ago, UN staff were in Vietnam delivering food aid to a country ravaged by war, isolated and on the brink of famine. Today, Vietnamese peacekeepers serving under the UN flag are coming to the aid of people elsewhere. Vietnam is among the 193 member states that make up the UN, which celebrates UN Day on Monday. October 24 marks the anniversary of the entry into force in 1945 of the UN Charter, the organization's founding document. The Secretary General also participated in the DAV-style dialogue with youth representatives and peacemakers at Vietnam's Academy of Diplomacy. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls on countries, especially developed nations, to do more to fight climate change and reach the target of net zero emission by 2050 during a speech at a ceremony to commemorate the 45th anniversary of Vietnam's UN membership in Hanoi. Take a look.
The United Nations is ready to ask the international community to fully engage to support the courageous decision by Vietnam to reach carbon neutrality in 2050. That means we cannot wait until after 2030 to move away from fossil fuels, particularly coal, or to peak global emissions. If the world does not cut emissions by 45% by 2030, then achieving net zero by 2050 will be a pipe dream. And that would mean a climate nightmare for billions of people. Wealthier countries must keep their promise to provide $100 billion to supporting developing countries to build resilience. At least half of all international climate finance must go to adaptation in support of populations affected already by climate change.
With the world in peril due to the COVID-19 opens a new window pandemic and the impacts of the war in Ukraine, Mr. Gutierrez also addressed the need for justice, as well as greater solidarity and cooperation. And nowhere do we need it more and more urgently than in our fight against the climate crisis, he said. The UN chief emphasized that action on loss and damage is a moral imperative that must be front and center at COP27. An alert from the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, about the forced return of asylum seekers from Malaysia to Myanmar. There have been multiple reports of deportation since April, according to UNHCR, with hundreds of Myanmar nationals allegedly sent back against their will in the last 2 months. The practice runs contrary to international humanitarian law and amounts to refoulement, according to UNHCR spokesperson Shabia Mantu. Take a look.
UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, is seriously concerned over the continued deportation by Malaysia of asylum seekers from Myanmar back to their country, placing lives at risk. According to information received by UNHCR, an asylum seeker from Myanmar was deported on the 21st of October from detention despite UNHCR interventions. Such deportations of refugees and asylum seekers amount to refoulement. The situation in Myanmar is forcing people to flee to seek safety within the country and across borders. UNHCR appeals to the Malaysian authorities to abide by their international legal obligations and ensure the full respect for the rights of people in need of international protection.
On Thursday,
Myanmar has been in turmoil since the military coup last year, with swaths of the Southeast Asian nation engulfed by fighting. More than 2,300 people have been killed in the military's crackdown on dissent since the coup, which rights group says includes razing villages, mass extrajudicial killings, and airstrikes on civilians. Foreign ministers from the region will hold emergency talks to discuss Myanmar ahead of November's Association of Southeast Asian Nations for the ASEAN Leaders Summit. ASEAN has spearheaded so far fruitless efforts to resolve the crisis, and the bloc is frustrated by escalating human rights atrocities. Integrating climate action into the country's development plan now becomes a necessity amid impacts of climate change, Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said in his keynote speech at the launching of World Bank Group's Philippine Country Climate and Development Report Tuesday. Balisacan said the upcoming Philippine Development Plan, or the PDP, 2023 to 2028 will include actionable plans that will help the country pursue a greener economy and more sustainable, affordable, and livable residential areas in the next 6 years. Take a look.
As the Socio-Economic Planning Secretary, I can honestly say that now more than ever, the integration of climate action into our development plans is of absolute necessity.
The World Bank reports that the Philippines is vulnerable to impacts of climate change that can affect its economic growth in the long run if this will not be addressed. Balisacan said among the priority actions integrated in the upcoming PDP 2023 to 2028 include mechanisms involving carbon pricing and incentivizing local government units to focus more on climate-friendly projects such as electric vehicles, sustainable tourism, biodiversity protection, and energy efficiency. Singapore announced Tuesday it aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, giving a firm date for the first time, and will look at using hydrogen as a major power source. If technology continues to advance, we foresee that hydrogen can supply up to half of our power needs by 2050, alongside domestic renewable energy sources and electricity imports, Wong said at an industry conference. He added that Singapore would experiment with key hydrogen technologies to see how it can be implemented on a large scale. Wong, the country's prime minister in waiting, said, "We do not have the land for large solar or wind farms or fast-flowing rivers for hydroelectric power." The city-state targets for carbon emissions to peak in 2030 at 60 million tons, a reduction of 5 million tons from the previous goal, Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong said. The Southeast Asian nation also has plans to look at developing low-carbon hydrogen as a major power supply in the long term. Green hydrogen is in sharp focus as governments seek to slash carbon emissions amid global warming and to safeguard energy supplies hit by the invasion of Ukraine by oil and gas producer Russia. But the hydrogen economy has not fully kicked into gear, awaiting significant uptake from high-polluting sectors like steel and aviation. A Thai plastic surgeon kidnapped while traveling in Mali has returned home after a ransom was paid, local media reported Tuesday. Noparat Ratanawaraha, who runs a popular YouTube channel where he posts travel clips, said he was on a tour of Mali and Burkina Faso, both nations that are grappling with bloody and long-running insurgencies. Thai Foreign Ministry spokesman Tani Sangrat said the 49-year-old was freed after 5.5 million baht, or $150,000 ransom was paid, the Bangkok Post reported. Noparat is believed to have been taken in the small eastern town of Kemparana near the Mali-Burkina Faso border. He was found there 25 days after his abduction, the Thai Foreign Minister said. According to the Bangkok Post, "I sincerely apologize to everyone who has worried about me," Noparat said in a Thai language post on his Instagram account on Monday. Noparat reportedly arrived in Mali on September 28, and his family alerted the Thai embassy in Senegal after they did not hear from him for a few days. The Thai Foreign Ministry did not respond to AFP's questions on Tuesday, but in an earlier statement, Tani said it was not clear who kidnapped Noparat. The United Nations recently urged action in Mali, Burkina Faso, and the neighboring Niger following the volatile security situation, which has seen UN peacekeepers and civilians attacked by terror groups. Heat waves are an increasingly common health hazard for many nations, but they are set to affect 4 times as many youngsters. By 2050, the UN Children's Fund UNICEF warned on Tuesday. According to the UN agency, at least 500 million children are already exposed to a high number of heat waves today. But by the middle of this century, all the world's children, more than 2 billion, will be affected, UNICEF said in a new report. This is regardless of whether average temperatures rise by 1.7 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, in line with low greenhouse gas emissions modeling, or whether they shoot up by 2.4 degrees if emissions are high. Protecting children from the escalating impacts of heat waves should be a priority for all countries, UNICEF said, in a call for an urgent and dramatic emissions mitigation measures to contain global heating and protect lives. President Marcos and former United Kingdom Prime Minister Anthony Charles Linton Blair discussed on Tuesday the best practices to make government effective and efficient. This after Blair paid a courtesy call on Marcos at Malacanang Palace in Manila. The Office of the President said in a Facebook post that quote, PBBM and Blair discussed a wide range of topics on bureaucracy and governance based on the best practices in developed countries. The OP also shared several photos taken during Marcos's meeting with Blair. President Marcos and Mr. Blair first met in New York City in September this year. During their first meeting, the two talked about the peace-building initiatives in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. They also tackled ways to ensure food security, address climate change, and boost trade. Blair currently serves as executive chairperson of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, a nonprofit organization that provides support to political leaders and governments to build open, inclusive, and prosperous societies in a globalized world. Meantime, President Marcos also had a meeting with World Health Organization, or the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. Marcos, on his official Facebook page, shared a photo and a short video clip of his meeting with Ghebreyesus. Malacanang has yet to provide further details about the meeting between Marcos and Ghebreyesus. During the meeting, Marcos congratulated Ghebreyesus on his re-election as head of WHO, the OP said in a separate Facebook post. Marcos, the OP said, also expressed his deep gratitude for the assistance provided by WHO to many developing nations during the most difficult phases of the pandemic. The meeting came as the Marcos administration sought to further relax travel restrictions in the country despite the prevailing coronavirus disease 2019 or the COVID-19 pandemic to propel economic growth. In the palace press briefing, Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco announced that Marcos will be signing an executive order allowing the voluntary use of face masks in indoor settings, except in public transportation, medical transportation, and medical facilities. Marcos, Frasco added, also agreed to remove reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, or the RT-PCR testing, as a pre-departure requirement and allow travelers to get their e-arrival card upon their arrival in the country. In September, Ghebreyesus said the end of COVID-19 pandemic is in sight. President Marcos graced the National Information and Communications Technology, or ICT, Summit 2022 at the Manila Hotel on Wednesday. His attendance at this year's National ICT Summit was in line with his administration's bid to pursue digitalization and technological innovations. Let's take a look.
And it is up to us who are in government to learn these new technologies, to learn these new techniques, and to take full advantage so that those of us in government are able to provide the best possible services that we can to our people, and as affordable as possible, so that we can provide that extremely important service. Unfortunately, when we look at the records, our country has ranked 89 out of 193 countries in the United Nations e-government survey. This assessment of our performance is, at the very least, worrying. We experienced actually a regression. And that this happened even though many innovations and technologies in ICT are open and widely available. But clearly, we will do better. Our ICT professionals are among the best in the field, and Filipinos are among the most tech-savvy people in the world. To achieve this end, we are committed to realize the vision of a digital Philippines. We will achieve this by enhancing the country's digital infrastructure, improving the regulatory framework for innovation, ensuring cybersecurity, and developing the country's digital workforce, amongst other things. The government will also facilitate the swift passage of the e-governance and e-government bills, and I am happy to report that at the last meeting of the LEDAC, which is the liaison body between the executive and the legislature, this came up, and it looks like that, well, the e-governance and the e-government bill will be consolidated, but they are working on it, and I have asked them to bring it out as quickly as they possibly can so that we have the framework with which we will digitalize our government. So these, the bills that we have asked the legislator to pass will enable to ensure fast, transparent, and efficient government service for the Filipinos.
Please prepare.
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. Thank you for joining us. I'm Eliana Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, reminding you to stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times.